As we all know, that threat hunting has always been the proactive move in security, but it can be slow, of course, expensive, and it needs time and talent. With AI reshaping both attacks and defense, security teams have kind of started to ask, can't we just use AI or vibe coding to actually hunt threats on instinct, not just on schedule? Today we have with us Aqsa Taylor, Chief Security Evangelist at Exaforce, and we are going to talk about what they call vibe hunting, what it is, how it can impact security teams. Is it something similar as we look at vibe coding? First of all, Aksa, it's great to have you on the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Swapnil. I'm very excited for our conversation today.
It's my pleasure as well. And this is an exciting topic, exciting development in this space. Before we talk about vibe hunting, just quickly remind our viewers about Exaforce.
Sure, yes. So Exaforce is an AI SOC platform. Now, I know a lot of times when people say AI SOC, they're generally thinking about, oh, you just help with alert triaging or helping reduce false positives. But Exaforce actually goes beyond that. So we have alert triaging, of course, but we also do threat investigations. We have our own detections that we create, not just from alerts and third-party triaging of other platforms, but because of behavioral context and semantic data layer that we create within the platform from our AI models and that our AI models operate on. And from there, we do threat hunting, investigation, and automated responses as well. So we cover the entire SOC strategy cycle.
Now let's talk about, of course, the term vibe hunting. It had its own vibe there. It's catchy, of course, it's quite understood as well what it may mean. But if I ask you, what exactly is vibe hunting?
Sure. But instead of giving you the definition, I'll tell you how it originated, even within Exaforce. We have an MDR service. So Exaforce is not just an AI SOC platform. We also have our MDR service that is always helping our customers keep up to date on their threat updates or detection and such. Now, our MDR hunters or threat hunters, detection engineers, they were actively pursuing the attack campaigns that were going on recently, like the Axios NPM supply chain attack, the TeamPCP, the GitHub Hackerbot-Claw attack campaigns. And they were always one step ahead. They were quick in detecting them. They were quick in informing them. They were quick in case escalations. So I started talking to them and I said, like, hey, traditionally this would take team of SOC analysts hours to investigate and get into. And I started to get to know how they're doing this. And then they showed me and walked me through this process where they were using our own AI SOC platform to do a lot of that work that would take them hours in a manual threat hunting process to be able to do in minutes, which was helping them accelerate their entire threat hunting process. So I think that is what vibe hunting really is. The real people, it's not replacing human analysts or human judgment, but it's empowering them to be able to do hours worth of work in minutes by taking that cumbersome, hardworking, or whatever you say, long time-taking manual work, automated and easily deployable at scale, just to keep up with the attack surface itself, right? Like in case of TeamPCP or these other attack campaigns, you see them happening and escalating within 2 hours at a larger scale. So to be able to keep up with those defenses, vibe hunting is how you use AI-enabled platforms like Exaforce to be able to really do that efficiently, but in a very short time on real-time data.
How are security teams actually doing this today? What does that workflow look like in practice?
Sure. So in case of, let's say, an example, like you hear about an attack campaign, whether it's the Striker or the Hackerbot-Claw or whatever, the first thing a threat hunter or detection engineer would want to do is learn everything about it. Hey, what are the signals? What do I need to look for? What are the IOCs, indicators of compromise? And then they need to update their environments to look for those indicators of compromise. In case of vibe hunting, whenever there is a hypothesis, the initial understanding of the attack itself, the manual work comes in where now the analyst has to create the detections and add the indicators of compromise and all of those. But in this case, what they do is they use automation agents. In our case, like in Exaforce, we allow for automation agents, which are AI agents that automatically look at these news sources and intel feeds and update IOCs automatically based on the new data that is evolving. So traditionally, manually, what would happen is people would see this, people would read this, people would have to update it manually. But now AI agents are doing what they would do, and it brings them that additional layer of assurance. Not just there, from there, the way you write your detections and the way you context stitch those signals. Sometimes, if you're just doing it completely manually, you may miss certain things that are indicators of some kind of an attack campaign or a compromise. But with a knowledge semantic layer that's already bringing this context together, not just from your SIM platforms, but also configuration, your posture, your all the other platforms that it's gathering this context from, like Exaforce does, it's able to stitch that context much faster, and even in some points show you visibility gaps that you may not even have thought about in your own detection criteria. So that's how platforms like Exaforce really help analysts to upgrade their detection and threat hunting experience in practice.
Excellent, thank you. And when I'm listening to you, it feels like this is less about scheduling a special event, and it's more or less like the teams can do whenever they have twitch, wherever they have instinct, it's more or less like on demand. How does Exaforce actually enable that kind of real-time intent-based motion?
Yes, that's a great question, and I think that's really our differentiator. A lot of times when you depend on only, let's say, legacy traditional SIM platforms and all, there is a post-index tax, a delay that you rely on, okay? So you first have to ingest the data, and then you have a certain delay in ingestion, and then that's what you rely on to create those detection rules and those policies and everything that follows from there on. What Exaforce does differently is that it's looking at streaming data. So as soon as we ingest or onboard and integration, first of all, we go back in history. So we start looking at data, not just from the point of integration, but behaviorally, what was the audits looking like, maybe even 30 days ago, 90 days ago. Depending on all of that data plus configuration data, meaning posture data that's usually not available in your SIM platforms or SOAR platforms. But Exaforce brings that additional context as well. So what it's doing is it's looking at your weaknesses, your risks, and it's looking at things that are coming from detection perspective, and is attaching those in real time. So that way you have faster threat hunting experience instead of waiting for everything happening later on and waiting for those detection rules to be updated periodically. So what happens in reality is that Exaforce also has its own detection content that it's creating in parallel of ingesting with other data, because as soon as there is new threat, of course, you need to have full visibility into it faster than maybe even you're relying on other platforms. So Exaforce provides that out of the box. That way, even if customers don't have their own SIM platforms, they can use Exaforce to threat hunt without losing on those visibility gaps, without having visibility gaps.
Let's talk about the term vibe itself. Depending on who you're talking to, a lot of folks, they kind of look down at it. I'm not a developer. I vibe code a lot, and I am able to create applications that I needed for my use, but I could not because I was not a developer, or it's too much to explain to a developer. And there is nothing wrong, I mean, that's the world we live in. Organic is not all instructions and hard coded. You don't have to be a car engineer to be able to drive a car, right? So it's making things very, very easier even for ordinary people. Just the way on Photoshop we can do a lot of things with that. Talk a bit about because security is not an easy thing. It depends on who you talk to, especially in this AI era. It's getting even more challenging. Talk a bit about how it empowers more teams. Like I was talking to somebody this morning, and they were also using vibe coding, but for totally different. Now their HR, their CISOs, their managers can write applications. They don't have to wait for developers. Of course, developers, they play a big role there, but it has enabled them. So talk a bit about how vibe hunting empowers teams, even CISOs, to be able to stay on top of things versus being reactive, responsive, and once again, lose night, depend on developers. Talk a bit about how it's going to change security altogether.
Great question. And I liked how you started it when you started asking me this question. You framed about the word vibing itself and how it generally has this negative connotation in a large security audience. So I want to zoom into that a little bit more. I think the whole negative connotation with vibing is if vibing is done, and when I say vibing, using AI for automating your tasks, whether it's coding in terms of software application building or in terms of something else, vibing. The whole negative connotation is because of the inexperience or immaturity of that model. Okay, so if you use AI agents just for the sake of using it without having no knowledge of what you're trying to build and build an application, it will take larger time to debug that application for bugs and security. So it ends up being a burden on senior analysts or senior QA engineers and such. So that's why there is that negative connotation. When people just vibe or just go wild with vibing without understanding what they're really doing, whether it's in terms of security or in terms of quality, then you end up with a half-built something that comes out of this vibing experiment that takes up more time than it promises. But and the same concept applies in vibe hunting as well. If you just rely on AI models that do not have context, okay, do not have enough context, do not have that knowledge semantic layer that I was talking about, then you do end up with incomplete results and you cannot rely on them. And it takes a mature or a level 2, level 3 analyst to then debug it. And now they have to spend time trying to find those visibility gaps that your AI agents could not really detect. So what's important and what is really important about this is how those models are creating these projects or helping in the process. And what is the foundation of this? The data that the models are built on. So its vibe in itself is not negative, but if the data that it's relying on, if the guardrails that are put in place, the transparency, the explainability of those models are lacking, then yes, you end up with more work that you bargained for by doing this experiment. So if anyone is looking at vibe hunting, you can use an open source project like Claude, and we have a Substack article that Joe helped in write. And in some ways, it helps you still in removing some of those manual tasks, and it's all great, but it's not complete. So it's really important that security leaders take this in mind, SOC analysts, threat hunters, detection engineers, that vibe in itself is not complete without the data that feeds it. So if you really want a mature and a good, efficient experience, not only it's about speed, but also about quality. So if you can speed up certain things, but if you want high quality results, rely on models and ask questions of the models itself that the agents are built on, and don't just vibe for the sake of vibing.
So very well said. Thank you for taking that. Also, do we need a specialized agent, or I mean, these days you can get a specialized agent, but it creates fragmentation, lock-in, or you can also use general purpose agents, but the prompting is very, tuning is very important. You can just use cloud or whatever it is. So does agent also matter, or it really doesn't matter? What matters is, better, I don't like the term best practices, but better practices, as you said, better prompt engineering, better data.
Yes, the agent absolutely matters, because in architecting the agent, there are certain parameters that you build, like how much creativity does it have, or does it need to strictly bound itself to the data that is fed with the data model? So there are these different parameters that are set during agent creation. So it does matter how the agent is built itself. How much liberty does it have to go outside of the data models that it is given? And that's where hallucinations come from, right? And then explainability is important. Like, what sources are you pulling from? It needs to be able to reason and justify those factors. So it does matter that the agents are built with certain guardrails in place, so the data that they produce is trustworthy. Of course, always have that human judgment zone and that lens that you should have. But if it makes your job easier, then it's better to rely on something that maybe you have to just review 20% of your time versus like 90% of your time, because you just can't trust its results.
Can you talk about these days, almost every company, they talk about AI, they just weld AI together. How is Exaforce approaching it differently, where it's not just slapping, welding, bolting AI on top of existing solutions?
Yes, that is absolutely a great question. And I think a lot of times it's the LLM models as well. People just think, hey, natural language query is AI, and let's just go with it. Oh, we have these detections in place. Now you have a natural language query and you can ask questions of it. Well, Exaforce took a step back and we said, like, we need to build this from the ground up. It's not just about putting an LLM agent on top of whatever we stitch together to make things faster. It's about quality as well. So before you even jump into engineering the agents and LLMs and user experience, let's first talk about the foundations that these agents will be built on top of. And so the knowledge layer, the semantic layer that we built is really the foundation of everything else that agentic model is built on top of. And this takes into account, we realize that, first of all, you need to have real-time context. You can't wait for a lag or a delay. So that means the detections have to be created as soon as there's an anomaly or there is a baseline behavior that is not being followed. But then the baseline behavior itself is so different, even from user to user. Maybe I travel a lot. So for me, it's very common to have different coffee places that I log in from or something. Maybe you don't travel as much as me, so it's very unusual for you to suddenly be traveling to a different city. So there is so much that goes into creating this behavioral analysis that building that layer, that knowledge layer, that semantic layer is really important. Then the agents can act on top of it. And that's where Exaforce really built this from ground up to be able to enable those SOC analysts and threat hunters to have not just faster results, but quality results that they can have assurance, and with additional MDR service that always tests this in-house. So we actually use our own platform in-house as well. We're our customers. So we're constantly checking and testing and improving this experience for ourselves and for our customers.
Excellent. Once again, thank you. You touched upon that. I just want to go a bit deeper into that. I mean, traditionally, threat hunting kind of requires a ton of context. You did talk about that. Log consolidation, of course, enrichment, correlation across tools. How does Exaforce handle all that complexity without overwhelming the analysts? Because, yes, we have to help them move faster, but also make things easier for them.
Yes. So I'll give an example of the recent Hackerbot-Claw attack campaign, okay? For those who are not familiar, pull requests in GitHub were being targeted for malicious code execution or privilege escalation, or even in some cases just changing the README file and manipulating the agent prompts whenever there is an auto approval process for version changes and such. But what was important to note here is that this kind of activity is generally seen as normal activity in tools and platforms, okay? Sending PR requests, changing versions and stuff like that. And a lot of times platforms don't have the good native detection coverage for such things. So GitHub and platforms, SaaS platforms especially, don't have detection coverage for such things. So if you don't have a platform that's also looking at such things beyond like native normal detection content, then you would have visibility gaps and you would have to start creating things yourself. But because Exaforce was able to detect this activity, we automatically alerted it and showed our customers like, hey, there's this thing going on. You may be impacted by it because we see similar patterns in your environment. This then helped our MDR services team to look further into it and be able to confirm whether we had anyone who was impacted or not impacted, and send them automated case report, something that you could even take to CISOs. So not just is it about, hey, this dashboard with crazy numbers and you're trying to find out what each number means or something, but it's about bringing that end values, like here's your full end-to-end report that you can take to your board, your CISO, your executive leadership, and show what happened, how it happened, where it happened, and when it happened. And that's what Exaforce was built from user experience perspective. And in fact, I was on a panel during RSA, and Manish from Replit, he's one of our customers, he quoted this. And you can see this in the video. If anyone's watching our YouTube, you can go and confirm that he said this, that he was able to take a screenshot from our dashboard and immediately inform his CISO that, hey, this attack that's going on, I'm not going to go in super detail in which one it was. Here's how we look from like an overview and what locations are impacted and which locations we have teams in, etc. So be able to take a screenshot of a security platform that is easily understood to an executive and C-level, that's that's what user experience is about, to reduce that effort that you have to become a translation layer between your executive team and your engineering team. And that's what we aim to provide with the Exaforce experience.
That makes you wonder who is actually your audience here. Is it for mature associates that want to scale, or is also for smaller teams with limited headcount, limited resources? They can also use this to build threat hunting capabilities from scratch.
Absolutely, absolutely. Especially teams that are not looking to invest in SIM platforms, they're too small, they have smaller headcount. They are definitely a target audience. I mean, you can definitely use Exaforce to really empower your team with very few resources. But also, if you're a mid enterprise and you do have a team, you may have SIM platforms and other things, but you're drowned in alert and you're kind of missing on the criticality of what's important, what's not important. But not just that, you're also probably have visibility gaps that your current tool stack is not giving you. That's also where Exaforce can really help you and make sense of what you already have and operationalize your existing platforms, tools, and services.
If someone who's watching this and they are stuck in the old model, running quarterly hunts, writing SAM queries manually, what is the first step they should take to start thinking about vibe hunting?
Look, I will say that AI is inevitable, right? Your teams may be using it in some capacity already. It's better to give them a fully mature product that will help them with the quality than them trying to do it this way by using some open source projects to try to do their work faster. They will end up with not high quality results, and maybe you may end up with like doing more work yourself and having to stitch that with. And of course, there's the sensitivity of data. How much can you feed to open source projects and all? But threat hunters are also using AI, and so time is of the essence. They're not stopping in quality assurance and such. They're just experimenting and experimenting at scale in really large volumes. So if you want to keep up with shorter breakout times, if you want to keep up with shorter escalation paths, then you have to keep up with those times as well. And AI can be a tool that really helps you in that front and not just be your enemy if used with the right model and right platform. And that's the assurance that I want you to have with Xforce, is that for us, it's not, we understand that speed is of the essence, time is of the essence, and so is the quality that you get, so that you can have that trusted value from the product and not have to spend more cycles in trying to correct the answers from AI.
What additional capabilities teams get by leveraging AI, which was not humanly possible otherwise?
Yes, I think you were referring to the Anthropics Mythos project when earlier when you talked about the bugs, and it's a very controversial topic right now in the cybersecurity industry, of course. And just my views, my personal views, are that this is where human responsibility also comes into play. I think what they created is helpful, where it can find bugs that it found bugs in so many different things, and we're talking about software that's beyond just our organizational context, right? This is banking, water facilities, everything is touched by software. So having that powerful AI capability that can quickly find threats or risks in all of those infrastructures that is relying on software comes with a huge responsibility. And I don't know if they anticipated it would, but it did. And the way they are handling it is responsible, right? Without releasing it to the public and following the responsible guardrails. And I hope they do continue to. Anyways, coming out of that, in general, AI models I see it similar to when the whole containerization, cloud security buzz happened, or the internet breakthrough, and all of that, right? And did it increase our knowledge in different ways? Yes. Now we can go on internet and learn so many things that we did not know about before with letters or whatever, right? And AI is going to be the same thing. It's just going to be a change that our future generations will live with. And it is going to amplify experiences, skill sets, knowledge in different ways. Recently, I was answering HelpNet articles questions, and one of them was, hey, what about junior analysts? You know, they used to learn threat hunting by doing all this manually. So what's going to happen to them? Like, how are they going to learn if AI is going to help them do this? And I said, it's going to up level and increase their knowledge in different ways. It's not that if they don't do it from scratch, they won't learn. It's going to bring them that data in front of them, and it's going to show them that data of how other analysts have done it, modeling after them. And so now it's almost like having the textbook in front of you that you read and you learn, than like trying to piece together different pages of that textbook by yourself. So I see AI as leveling us up in different ways in knowledge and in skill set. But with that comes a lot of responsibility. And this is where security teams must level up themselves too. Otherwise, you're kind of fighting a gunfight with swords in some sense.